my patrons, happy full moon in Aries. We're in the energy of it. Obviously, Aries is an initiatory energy, so there's likely to be an essence of new beginning or a sense of it, just feeling a little bit charged, a little bit new. Whew, I mean, certainly with everything that's going on right now, I know in my personal life there's a sense of being more disciplined with the phone and being more disciplined with how much engagement with information there is. For a lot of us on this path, the awareness has been there for so long that there's a little bit of a shift of intention with regards to where we're putting our energy and where we're putting our attention, and making more time for nature and making more time for human connection, positive human connection, that is. Over the weekend, I had a really nice download, which I might have shared in the grounding energies video. I appreciate also that I tried something new going live on Patreon, but it would appear that you all can't comment. And so when we're live here, when I share the live link on YouTube, unlisted video, you're able to comment and share, which probably is a little bit nicer so that we can engage in these live shares. So holding steadfast to the vision and getting back into feeling into the vision that we're holding. So really coming back into that intuitive work to align ourselves with the vision that we hold and carry for our personal well-being, our bodies obviously, and our homes and the people in our lives, and then that sincere kind of extended prayer for the masses and the collective, as we really are moving through pretty potent energies of systemic breakdown, revelation, internal revelation that obviously can point to global revolution as well, which we're seeing a sort of domino effect of that revolutionary energy, and how it unfolds and how it looks can be different in each constellation or each place on the planet. I am hearing something about just mass exodus. That can be mass exodus from working paradigms. And we're having to really prioritize our day-to-day routines and how we're visioning and holding space for that unfolding in our personal lives, and taking really, really good care of our mind-body complex in essence. And of course, part of that withdrawal from technology and the phone is a reclamation of the mind, and to know our mind, to know our heart. And I kind of put them together in unity, right? So we're not listening to the monkey mind. And that's part of the ongoing deprogramming and decolonization and holding space for our triggers, is that we're kind of wiping the slate clean energetically to see the grand distortion of ages and the systemic traumatization of generations past and now, to continue to heal the colonial mindset, certainly, as in there's that expression of decolonialization and shadow work, which is a huge part in our freedom, actually, and our ability to return in authenticity to the land, and be more authentic within ourselves, right? Because I was doing work with a client over the weekend, and that was a huge piece of like, we have to be able to be honest with ourselves of what we're thinking and what we're feeling and how we're operating, to actually be honest with other people. And it's something I've witnessed with regards to a disconnect, right? Like people that are disconnected from the body, but then there's a disconnection from the emotional body, which means that through our patterns, we're not fully aware of what the body is holding. And I would dare say we probably couldn't be unless we endeavor the greater healing with intention. So we are really present to our feelings and our emotions and the energies moving through us to be able to sit with them and alchemize them into greater presence, which there were times where I would have said it is though. It's a very visceral awareness, right? Like where we can be aware of the ages and the trauma that we're burning through the emotional alchemy, and how that is a functional service to the whole and to the collective. Um, and then, of course, I think of our creative expression, because a lot of us here are creators, as in we have a creative outlet. And that can be an earlier stage of an awakening where we have to reattune, we have to remember our creativity, right? And then that leads me to play and play and joy. I giggle because it's something that continues to hit into my awareness, and yet um it's not easy necessarily. Like we think of play like something that should just be accessible to all of us, but through our indoctrination and trauma, etc., we get really serious about things. And play doesn't have to be, you know, ecstatic necessarily, but I'm relating it to like just being able to go to the sea and go for walks. I think of things like the plant medicine and how even again, to each their own, but so microdosing on mushrooms is more of a thing, certainly here in the UK, but I've noticed in places in North America there's a lot more of that availability, and that kind of local homegrown plant medicine can help to lighten us up a little bit, help us remember. There again, it's not the end goal, but there are pathways that we can access in the physical dimension that can help us remember that heritage of playfulness and joy. But it's authentic and it's grounded. Good morning, Christopher. Yeah, so see, this is what I mean, is that it's nice to be able to have the comments appear and be a little bit more interactive. So I appreciate, Chris, the comment about not being able to interact on the live stream straight from the Patreon app. I still might maybe do that from time to time, but here we are this morning with the interaction, so I do really appreciate it. I'm looking down at my notes going like the truth, and the truth shall set us free, and how increasingly those fundamental, those sort of pillar oriented teachings are like a safety net or a silver lining with all of this. There again, there's a slight distortion when we're engaging with the technology and being able to see all the many things that are going on in the world. um Gosh, how to put it, like in the quantum expression, to me there is value in technology and the internet, and yet we don't want to be selling our soul to it. We don't want to be um giving over our autonomy to it. We want to reclaim our divine intelligence and our which is, you could say, a very high vibratory kind of technology, that we reclaim that knowing to then be able to use the technological resources in an abundant way, in a way that supports the whole and in a way that supports us in the next phase of our human evolution. Because what we're observing potentially is some of the darkest aspects of our human evolution being exposed, being seen very obviously, the divide and conquer, the division aspects, whether it's borders, whether it's land grabs, whether it's horrid destruction via religion and class and race, and all the isms that could potentially divide us. We're really, really seeing that underbelly being exposed, as you could say, almost like we on a three-dimensional level. We've hooked into the economy and capitalism and this idea of progress, and yet The progress uh, isn't necessarily pointing to our personal evolution, right? The human species evolution. So it's almost as if like the external three-dimensional grid has exploded, and with regards to like all we're all on phones and we all have technology and we're all progressing, but we're still, we're still having to evolve ourselves into that higher base tone, right, with empathy and compassion. And that's part of the duality that we're witnessing. A lot of hope and a lot of just protests and people rising up and craving to see greater compassion and leadership. What up? I just saw a comment. Oh, there, listening pre-dawn coastal drive. Oh, what? Yeah, Grand Rising. I was also enjoying the moon views last night. So good morning to Scott. Welcome new patrons as well. Really, really happy to have you all here. And now I'm looking at my cards. So we'll get into some readings, divine guidance and loving clarity. That can be, I look down and I see the double in the upright where I'm like, well, there's that pointing to our addictions and or our attachments. And I put my hands up for sure with regards to that, and also a greater evolution with regards to my ability to truly accept just the here and now and where I am with the fullness of the addictions and the spectrum of things, and still permissioning oneself to show up. And then to me, a greater awareness certainly with the phone addiction and or the kind of dopamine hit of seeking validation, of seeking answers outside of self, right? Where it's knowing thyself and the truth shall set you free. And the truth is really the ultimate path of liberation or freedom. But the truth isn't outside of self, the truth is within the being that we are. And the more we sit with that and embolden that, the more we can trust in its presence. And I mean, reflecting on my own previous cycle, I'm certainly aware that through all the turbulence and all of the loss and the seeming instability, I really held dear the fact that it was truly the spirit that kept me going, right? And the apparition of a few people who really, really helped and supported. So again, I'm ever grateful and appreciative of that support system, and yet here now continuing to deepen the connection to that infinite and eternal spirit that I would say sort of connects us all and connects us into empathy. Um, Otherwise, it's probably more of a facade or an egoic function to be perceived a certain way rather than just exposing the truth. And that's another thing I was sort of dwelling on, which was a part of my earlier shares. I'm talking, way back when I started sharing this deep spiritual knowing of the transparency of all that is, and like the kind of access point of things like the Akashic record and the eternity of our soul, and that knowing that in truth it's all transparent. So um that's where we're holding space for some of these seemingly nefarious power grabs, where when it gets to that point, the karmic reckoning is also continuing to unfold. So we all at some point in our journey will meet our karma, right? And we'll endeavor to, and how do we know it? We know it through the alchemization process, through the holding of space and feeling all the feels. And when we're full of awareness and we can feel the pain, whether it's our ancestors, whether it's our own personal soul's karma, that's the reckoning, right? Is to actually transform the pain that we've caused, or the trace of ancestry of why and how we're attracting certain experiences, And then, on the other side of the emotional alchemical process, just being a bit more whole or feeling a bit more able to carry on or feeling, and I've witnessed it even in a smaller framework in retreat where people will hit a physical block, and it's because there is emotion that wants to be relieved. There's emotional density. If you think of the human body as being made up mostly of water, and we think of an ethereal energy and the elements of fire and earth, and the idea of a kind of a plasma field, where it's the alchemical process, the heat can burn through, making like a steam, but that's transforming the cells of our being. Denser cells that are attracting certain experiences that then we process and alchemize to then allow ourselves to stabilize into different energies that can hold the higher bass tones. And I'm almost certain that's been part of my own journey of um, certain physical requirements to then keep expanding. Because if we're just constantly expanding, we're not contracting, that's sort of leads to a burnout because it leads to an imbalance for the physical body and for the system itself. So divine guidance and loving clarity, divine guidance and loving clarity. You guys can always feel free to reach out. Let me know if there's certain noodles, like if you're wanting to go down certain threads of topic shares. You just also filling me in and let me know how you're doing physically, and or what you're journaling, what you're intending to create in your lives. I know some of you have been traveling, some of you are continuing to detach from the phones as well, and I feel emboldened by that as well, to see some of your shares and or to recognize that communal work that we're all doing here. Divine guidance and loving clarity for the collective. Divine guidance and loving clarity. This come through the daily reading, some of it, but there's still this sort of being more consciously aware of the energies that we're releasing, that we're offloading, right? With Aries being an initiatory energy, that would also call to going, I'm not going to focus on that anymore. I'm not going to give much energy to this thing anymore. And that's like boss energy to me. So so there could be some niggly things going on in a work situation. Now it's pointing to a greater clarity. Eight of Sword reverse. So we're no longer in the prison of our mind, and we're able to see certain things a little bit more clearly. And that can be where we're not fully loving ourselves, where we're still carrying certain burdens that our soul might not be kind of on board with, or like might be nudging us to release certain burdens. Hala! Nearly purchased a phone safe. Phone safe? Is that right? And then held back. Well, oh gosh, I don't know if I'll have it in my phone anymore, but I did recently upgrade, but I purchased a used one. So and I do think it's like a better phone. I remember my iPhone 12 would have these beeps, these random beeps, and I'm sure there was something exposed about the iPhone 12 of being particularly addictive. So I'm finding a little bit more discipline with my new used phone. So I'm kind of coming off of that trail of just constantly upgrading for brand new, a shiny technology. In fact, I actually replaced my old laptop as well, but with a used laptop, the same edition actually. So mainly just through circumstance, because I was actually taking my old one to get a battery replacement, and then in the faff of this person trying to replace the battery, a whole bunch of stuff glitched and went wrong. It's a physical box with a timer. Intriguing. As in something, a device that helps you discipline. So I see. So like you're going to try to do the disciplining yourself, and then if got you, got you. So interesting that these sorts of things are coming out too, right? Like the ways to discipline ourselves with how much we're using, and it's so clear to me too, like the way endeavor, even when I'm in human interaction, that there's like a certain amount of presence, and then we'll backtrack into like there's some sort of soothing, right? Like en masse, there's almost this self-soothing through the phones that we can kind of detach and self-soothe just through our own scrolling. Yeah. So I'm hearing that song, Love is in the Air. Love is in the air, but it's not particularly super duper present. There seems to be, again, some s- de-burdening ourselves, that we're still having to release some burdens. Maybe with regards to past love situations, with the King of Pentacles in the reverse, that's one pointing to like it being work related, that there could be a boss at work or management at work that's making us feel like we're having to take on more than we want to, or that our soul is aligned with. And then this is pointing to also like a greater sense of self-love, having more self-respect, having a greater sense of worthiness. I just then got a little hit of yeah, like en masse, other ways. So we see the protests, but then there was something about, the taxation system and an increasing sort of disgruntled unrest around paying certain taxes and certain additional fees, where yeah, there's just going to be a continued pushback from more and more people as they awaken, that will kind of target, think of like is it Jenga, that block, the little rectangular squares that you build up, and then each person tries to take one out, and then eventually it topples over, but each person's trying not to have it topple over. So we're seeing, pockets of collectives that are pulling those Jenga blocks, and eventually there'll be a kind of a toppling over, bearing in mind in the fringes and or on the grassroots level, there are community endeavors that are happening, and I really have no doubt that there will be well-intentioned good people coming into resources that will support new paradigm efforts in feeding, housing, educating, right? Like that we are the people. We are the people of the planet that are coming back into balance and greater harmony with the planet through the planet's design in the greater cosmos as well. I did hear someone talk about to be mindful of even this idea, which I've used as well, but the bifurcation or the split is just a temporary perceived chaos. So it's all just sort of rumbling and getting really chaotic to then upgrade into a higher octave, right, of co-creation. Not utopia, not some perfect ideation, but challenge on another level. So we're more aware of the central nervous system, and we're more aware of authentic co-creative expression, and a kind of divine will that comes through these different collectives, and finding our kind of soul family as well. So for some of you, there could be a job situation or a relieving of a burden. Just releasing certain burdens that could either be connected to work, father figure, authority figure, and relieving the burden to then focus on self-care, focus on self-love, right? Now that, because there's a Two of Cups here, the Two of Cups is reversed, but there's the Chariot, so eventually getting momentum with regards to greater self-love. Property values and taxes have doubled. Gentrification, methinks. Is that I'm kind of having to think about what gentrification means. It's like when monies will come into a certain area and gentrify it, like make it suddenly be super um inaccessible to people in a regard. I think about certain areas in the southwest of England where they might have been down and out and then got some vibe, and then people moved in, and then the property prices went way up, and rental prices as well. And I mean, and that's something also to acknowledge as far as the recognition of a global takeover, or global um, web of the archonic system, and that kind of false matrix grid, that it is a global infrastructure with a few sacred pockets that haven't been completely taken over, and that it's through that remembrance um, and our own humility and detachment with regards to wherever we are in our kind of system, right? um, so yes, that's continuing to happen. And uh, I'm seeing interesting, like a pullback into greater darkness, but it's not a fearful darkness. It's like I think of like the hobbits, or really coming back into the earth and earth work, and how kind of simple and peaceful that is. And then within the last week, I also had this reminder of there was a phase uh that really kind of, I guess, got me to this point, but where I kind of denounced the desire. And then I can also see the egoic function and the learning and the humility that come through any kind of chasing or addiction to the control or sense of like, this is how it's going to be, or I know this. And, um, but like a total relinquishing of what the world is selling. Like, I want nothing that you have to offer. I want this, this, and this, right? So, um, growing food, being in community. There's a lot of that, which could be deemed feminine, but to me, it's just authentic earthly wisdom, but coming through any human. But there's a greater increasing surge and power and call for people to be in holistic, you could say matriarchal type of communities where we're all working together for a common goal. um and to me, the love the healing power of love is also a surge into these visions, which personally, the majority of people that I communicate with or surround myself with are aligned with that vision. But it's just kind of astounding that the multitude of kind of breakdown that has to continue to happen to decolonize the mind, right? And to relinquish in addiction to that power and control, and coming back to earth. I see that often in separation, where we project certain fearful delusions onto people. And that as a teacher, it's like those are projections based in fear, and there's a lot of things that aren't actually as fearful as the system would want people to believe, but rather divisive construct. um so as in like, even the word addiction, there's a lot of nuance with regards to how we perceive addiction, because it's a very personal thing that can inhibit expansion, and yet to each their own, right? Like, every single person is on their own path, and certain addictions are not necessarily, um, well, any addiction, it can seem like it's not that bad, but if the person is really struggling, it's it's bad for them, right? And then other times you can be projecting like, oh my god, so and so is doing this, that, and the other, and it's not even like affecting their soul at all. And when we're connected to the soul, it overrides. So true heart-centered alchemy and regenesis trumps any behavioral pattern, if that makes sense. So being in alignment is a regenerative, self-healing state of being and consciousness, which is where, non-judgment comes in, is that to each their own, in as far as people finding their way to that regenerative state. And often is the case that we might carry certain addictive tendencies to prove the will, to sort of shine light that the alchemy and the regenesis is beyond the some of the things that we might be holding, but it's not to our detriment. It's for the teaching itself. It's for the example of how the regenerative cells can override things that the collective would say, well, that's bad, like eating too much sugar, or right, whatever it might be for us as individuals. So the Chariot card is here, which is a beautiful card of being called forward, and the Lamb of God, expression, divine expression, innocence. Earlier in the share, I was talking about playfulness, and that there's a innocence in our heart space that we're endeavoring to return to and or remember. How do we remember it? Well, we sort of have to be aware of some of the burdens and shackles that we're carrying from our ancestors, from the indoctrination of the system itself, right? Indeed, and it's a very personal thing. That's an aspect that I'm pointing to. Our addictions are very personal to our own soul's growth. And if you look at it like contraction, expansion, and tension, our addictions, like a lot of relationships, the things that might cause us pain, are still pointing to an evolutionary journey. And that's what I mean about holding it and containing it in love and total acceptance, that we're all addicted because of the widespread disconnection of the systems that we've been born into through some level of choice to also experience the grand rising of our consciousness as a human species, to override and heal despite those seeming addictions, but then we reframe them and to hold them in grace and sacred connection. Divine guidance and loving clarity. Some of you might get communication or contracts coming through. Overcoming. So as we release these burdens, okay, which for some of you is connected to work and authority figure, or the greater authority that we're all kind of seemingly facing, which still has karmic connections from within self, but seeing them a lot more clearly to be able to release them and then express ourselves and shine brightly and move forward unapologetically. Because there's something, a written word, as in maybe you're journaling more, and or somebody's coming in with a message that could point to either legalities. Scott mentioned like valuation or something. So there could be even like documents around a home purchase or a legal contract with renting. But there's some kind of like the written word flying in, sending a message, and that's helping us shine, that's helping to embolden that sense of like deserving. Why? Well, because the lovers is reversed and the two of cups is reversed. For some of us with intention to create harmony in more intimate relationships, there's this sort of signing of contracts or messages and opportunities coming in that help us shine or that reflect our shiny nature of how we desire to be in the world, that's going to help us love ourselves more and then eventually bring in partnership, deep love, mother's milk, a birth as a portal. Interesting that that card comes through on the Aries full moon, because that is like the birth. Aries is the birth point of our cosmic reality, of this entire galactic solar system or whatever, that we're, and then that to me is reflective of this deep love in the voidal womb of creation, that we are being reborn collectively through insight, through suffering, through deep alchemical pain, and then moving through a portal together, right? A quantum portal, an earthly portal, it's all still manifest in this reality, but we are moving through a sort of a corridor that's going to help us come through the other side. And that's the Neptune Saturn conjunction as well. The Neptune Saturn conjunction is sort of forcing us to see through delusions and illusions, to then reorient ourselves to a divine vision from within self, not what we've been programmed to want necessarily. And that's a big piece, because it's not coming through control and domination. It's not coming through marketing and sales tactics. It's coming through the heart of humanity and the soul of the earth, and a cosmic orientation. It's so far beyond our human mind that that's what we're having to continually purge, reframe, let go, move forward, like this sort of constant tension. Oh, that's nice. That we're remembering to embody more of our soul's essence to co-create an authentic truth, which allows every individual to be in their authenticity and then move through the earth. So there's no like deeply entangled karmic stuff anymore. It's autonomous light-filled beings. I'm thinking of that prophecy, Celestine prophecy. The visions in that book were very aligned with, I think, a lot of the visions of New Earth teachers or New Paradigm teachers. So we, the Hathors, deep love. You could look up the Hathors as well if you're curious about more learning or research. The deep mother's milk birth as a portal. And that, again, we're just collectively moving through the birth canal as tight and squeezy and coming out, crying for the relief and also the pain of being born in these little finite and fairly limited bodies on this planet. But that we remember our divinity, we remember part of our soul's essence. And that's where deep meditation, I've been on the regular now, going up to the top field and sitting and meditating just as the sun sets, and I'm like, oh God, like often we'll have like a good little cry and a release, because it just reminds. Oh, smarty me, I just flipped the screen and flipped it back and she came back. Okay, so joy. I like this because we've been talking a little bit about relieving these ancestral and just lifetime burdens of like life is serious and life is hard and I have to keep carrying all these burdens from the past, when actually we have access to joy. We have access to innocence. Why? Because our heart is pure, because our heart is innocent. And regardless of our trespasses, regardless of our sins, regardless of all the blah, 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 the love and unconditional love in our heart can purify and help us learn the lessons of distortion and division, where we are from a perception of separation and fear into a perception of loving unity, which is the loving unity within self, which is the love that they would say, like, God has love for all of us, that we are all deserving children here, right? Hence where the other, bombing people, killing people, starving people, not letting people live, like that's just such the opposite end, the very obvious distortion of division and power and control, power through fear and control versus the power of love. I'm hearing that song in I'm your lady. You are my man. Sing it with me, people, even though I don't know the words. But it ends up being into, but I'm ready to learn in the power of love. Is that right? In the power of love. I'm like hearing it all, and I just want to sing, you guys. Divine guidance, loving clarity. So I've pulled the joy card and the sacred geometry card. But I'm ready to learn. It's the power of love. See, force is just force. There's a certain level of power in that, which that's obvious, right? Control and manipulation is force that's a little bit more deceptive. Okay. So we're seeing through all these different layers and levels of the distortion that, yes, is mighty. Force is mighty. It can be powerful, but there's a deeper truth. It's the power of love. It's the power of a unified mind. It's the power of heart-centered manifestation versus just manipulation people's minds to get what we want. That's not the truth. It's like I'm thinking of the bread and the fish, manifesting the bread and the fish to feed the masses, right? It's like, and then I'm thinking of that. I saw a video that made me weep about when the Navy ships were busy illegally intercepting the Sumud, the flotillas. And that in that time, thank you, Celine Dion, thank you. But then in that time, some of the people of Gaza were able to do a bit of fishing, and I've had this where my intuition is like, they're the Christ. So the dignified people are sort of the second coming of Christ that are teaching us about the truth and freedom through their sacrifice. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I'm feeling a little bit of emotion. Do 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 do. Do. Awesome. I don't get that card a lot. This is from the Astro Oracle deck. Oh, wow. Fascinating. Healing the root to expand into community. This is where, again, we're having to relieve burdens and truly be bold in relinquishing and letting go of things that no longer serve, which the soul knows. The soul knows. And the healing of the root would be like, certainly in this collective, there's been a fair bit of, mother wounding, healed mother wounding, a greater love of self, and this final shedding, birth portal, right? And a final shedding of, I'm not going to take that on. I'm not going to fulfill that task. I'm not going to do that. Messages coming in that incite greater joy, remembrance of self-love and wisdom and self-acceptance to then move us forward as we shine, as we choose to be who we want to be and or who we are, without the heaviness of the programmed imprint. And then I'll show you this. This is the card I very rarely, I don't think I've ever pulled this card. It's probably not true, but I feel like I very rarely pull this card. And this is 11th house. This is community. This is the Aquarian signature. Pluto's in Aquarius. And they've said that too. Like, astrologers speak to the fact that Pluto out of bounds, Pluto's been retrograding out of bounds, which is often an indication of the masses uprising, power to the people, the true power within us. It's not in alignment with power grab, force, manipulation, and divide and conquer. It's in alignment with the heart of a global humanity sharing this planet, right? So this community is expanding. Be open. I'm hearing be open, be prepared. I'm now starting to sense, oh gee whiz, and then vision. I'm thinking that this idea of preparation is going to keep coming through. And that can be, for some of you, that can be pretty physical. So I'm not quite there yet, but I have had loops of thought and vision coming through around just stocking up on bags of rice. I have a potato bag, hi Scott, where I'm growing potatoes, and I have a little bit of a garden patch. Plus I know people with land and who are growing and who have access to plant medicine, all that kind of stuff. So it can be physical, like stocking up. Just stocking up on certain basic needs, right? Preparation, physical preparation. Preparedness, though, other than that, more kind of like physicalization of the idea of being prepared, right? It's more ethereal and presence oriented in my awareness. It's more about be open and be prepared. Be prepared for the continuation of extremism. And that's what I mean too, is that we hold space, that we're able to hold space, which we've been doing all along, but like we're holding space in the extreme polarization and ensuing chaos. Again, remember that, and this is physics and science, but it's like that vibratory. So there's like a certain frequency, and then when you stabilize that frequency, there's like a pattern. The sand or whatever, the water will make a pattern, and that pattern holds. And then when you shift into a different frequency, the shifting process, like everything goes chaotic, everything kind of rips apart to then establish itself in a new frequency. So for most of our lives, we've probably in this timeline been moving through a shifting pattern, which is where it's possibly just seeming like constant chaos, right? And eventually, whether or not it's in our timeline, I would dare say let's not be attached to that outcome. But there will be a new civilization, a new paradigm that becomes stable. In my ideation, it's more of that kind of humans are creative and we heal vibrationally through sound frequency and tone. And then a lot of the fear mongering and a lot of the fearful tactics are dissolved. People are getting their karmic reckoning, which helps them embody greater soulful truth. And that I think of Jacques, what's his name? Oh, it's escaping me. Not Cousteau, that's another deeply embedded learning from school. Venus Project. Peter Joseph did Zeitgeist, and he did a fair bit of talking about Jacques, and I do think he's passed now, and I remember because I've watched a fair bit of him, but this is a man who visioned the Venus Project, which is like a kind of higher technology, but in union with Earth and humans, obviously, right? And in one of his shares, he was like, this shit's got to go. As in these weird old paradigm power grab, force through power, or power through force rather than love. Like this shit's got to go. These old structures have got to go. We've got to evolve, right? So here we are, moving through the portal, birthing ourselves in this Aries new moon right after we had those eclipses in Pisces and Virgo. Virgo's or Pisces rather, is the 12th house. It's this final sign. It's the merging into nothingness. It's the releasing and letting go. It's all of the illusions coming up and out to then refine the detail, letting go of martyrdom and letting go of victimhood and letting go of over perfectionism and overly criticism and blah, blah, blah. Self-other, right? Unify through Pisces, and then boom, Aries, hi. What are we going to do with that? What are we going to do with all this new awareness? Thank you. Thank you, Jock Fresco. Hala, 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 hala. Jock Fresco and the Venus Project. Part of his vision to me is kind of the way Earth might look in 200 years or something. I would love to say like in 10, but I think it's going to be a little bit more chaos before we we start implementing some of those visions. We're walking through a portal. We're walking through like a hallway. I almost think of it as like we're dying. Like collectively we're going through a mass death, and that's a death of ego. That's a death of consciousness. That's a Why? Because when I think of this, I'm looking at it, birth is a portal, but I'm like interpreting it somewhat because this looks like a corridor to me. And I think about those movies that would say, like, when we die, we're then in a waiting room, we're in some corridor, but actually our soul's being cleansed. We're learning, we're integrating a bunch of our experience here on earth. And when we come back, we're a little bit more evolved, we're a little bit more awakened, we're a little bit more aware, right? So that we can have the awareness to forgive ourselves. Plus, the collective is holding that for the oncoming humanity. Awesome. Is she live? Gotta go. Enjoy. Have a wonderful day, Scott. Purge, heal, cleanse, open to broader capacity, loving self and other. Beautiful. Okay, cool. I'll be shooting as well. There's the corridor that we're walking through. Plant those seeds, my lovers. I'm gonna wrap her up as well. So thanks, Scott, Chris. Really great to go. Really great to join us live here. I appreciate everyone here. I appreciate you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. Happy Monday. And yeah, see those intentions. Visualize. This is the vision with Neptune. Neptune is often represented as Pisces, deeply spiritual. It's our higher mind, it's our vision. That Saturn very much is wanting to structure that vision for us. So keep the faith. A lot of the things just then, a lot of the things I express here, I say to myself as well. I'm wanting to keep the faith. Keep the faith for the vision in this long, long. I never would have imagined when I started All to Love that the journey it would take me on. But I think of like people having babies, you just never can control it. You never know exactly how that kid's going to turn out. So I'm a little bit like that. It's like All to Love is a teenager now, and I'm just sort of having to let it free. Just be what you're meant to be, my love. But I'll still show up as long as I'm called to. Have a great day, you guys. Thanks for being here. Have a magical Monday. And don't forget to do your little rituals for this glorious, big, big super moon in Aries as it keeps seeding the intention to create a more harmonious world. Thanks, Chris. Enjoy. Have a great day, you guys. Peace out.